Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Little King story playthrough. So, we're pretty much just trying to round off most of our areas at present. Just trying to build up more money, complete more quests, because the sooner we get through all of this, the better, really. Because it means that we'll have more citizens to play with, and should anything disastrous happen, we've got a way to fix it all. Obviously, I'm ignoring Super Escargot for the time being, and I mean, we're doing pretty well. It's just these two residences, well, three residences in Soldier Town. I'm just going to keep messing up the name of that place, aren't I? But, yeah, so we've just got that and the Royal City, and we should be good to go, really. And the other thing that's important is that it's a very good idea before you go to take on the Ripe Kingdom and King Shish Kebaboo, to get about 3 miners in total. At present I only have 1, which is not ideal, but we can cope, and or at least we will make it to the point where we do have enough to go do that. Whether it actually comes in handy or not is a different matter altogether, but it's worth a shot to get ourselves prepared. Now, I'd never actually realised that you could face down enemies in this little patch of the forest here, which is, it's a really difficult space to fight enemies, really, because obviously it's very enclosed. This is more enclosed than I think any area that you fight in ever in the game, and obviously it's quite obscured from view, really, because everything's hidden behind the trees. But either way, it still went well, and we're just gonna rein in the money. So I was thinking, since we have got, unfortunately, a few more parts of this before we go take on the Ripe Kingdom, just because I want to make sure I'm prepared. And while I probably could have maybe fast-forwarded some of this, we'll just have a nice, relaxing time, and actually talk about world domination. Because obviously people have thought quite a lot about world domination over the years, and various individuals and regimes have tried it throughout history, but they've never attained it, which, I mean, is probably for the best, because I think generally when the world is completely dominated by a single person or regime, generally they're the type of regimes that are very not pleasant. So you're probably more likely to end up in a bit of a dystopia. And generally that is always how it's presented, funnily enough. So, historically, world domination's been thought of in terms of one nation expanding its power to the point that all other nations are subservient to it. So there's various ways of doing that. It's either by establishing a hegemony, so you create a leader state that rules subordinate states by means of implied power, either by threat of force rather than by direct military force. However, you can also get it by, just taking over everything, which is essentially what we're doing right now. We are gaining world domination through military force. Probably one of the most noticeable instances of world domination was Alexander the Great, because in the 4th century BCE he very notably expressed a desire to conquer the world, and apparently, according to Wikipedia, there is a legend that persists that after he completed his military conquest of the known ancient world, he wept because he had no more worlds to conquer. But unfortunately for him, he knew nothing of China, and of course knew absolutely nothing about Central and South America. But considering, like, you know, the full size and scope of the world, it's kind of impossible for someone to dominate the world as it is, because no single nation, however big and powerful, can dominate a world of well over 100 independent nations and billions of people. And that last quote there comes from an article in the Atlantic Community Quarterly from 1979. So there's a whole batch of things in this Wikipedia article.
Yes, sir.
You've got a very interesting proposition that came from Sir Walter Raleigh, or Raleigh, probably get that right, in the early 17th century, and essentially he proposed that world domination could be achieved through the control of the oceans, something that actually is quite correct, because whosoever commands the sea commands the trade. Whosoever commands the trade of the world commands the riches of the world, and consequently the world itself. So, I mean, that is pretty accurate, to be fair, because if you are in control of the oceans, then you decide where the money goes, and because money makes the world go around, you're all sorted. Apparently in 1919, Halford John Mackinder also offered an influential theory for a route to world domination, writing, "Who rules East Europe commands the heartland. Who rules the heartland commands the world island. Who rules the world island commands the world." But that doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. There is also the view of Hans Morgenthau, who, if I just have a quick jump, was one of the major 20th century figures in the study of international politics, and he actually believes that the conquest of the world was technically possible, and the reason that it's technically possible is because of mechanical development of weapons, transportation and communications, because they make it technically possible to keep the world in a conquered state. Because technology undoes both geographic and climatic barriers, so that today no technological obstacle stands in the way of a worldwide empire, as modern technology makes it possible to extend the control of mind and action to every corner of the globe regardless of geography or season. And that particular quote is from Politics Among Nations, The Struggle for Power and Peace, which I believe was edited by Alfred A. Knopf. And obviously I believe came from Morgenthau initially. He also continues in this article, wherever it was, it is also given Total War that terrifying world-embracing impetus which seems to be satisfied with nothing less than world dominion. The machine age begets its own triumphs, each forward step calling forth two or more on the road of technological progress. It also begets its own victories, military and political, for with the ability to conquer the world and keep it conquered, it creates the will to conquer it. So, in that you have the whole thing of, well, if you have the opportunity to conquer the world and the ability to, kind of makes people want to try it, which is really quite cool. And there is actually a list of the largest empires that ever existed, because really the idea of empire is probably the closest that most people got to world domination. I mean, there's a difficulty in stating what constitutes an empire, and calculation of land can be controversial, but there has been a definition of empire as any relatively large sovereign political entity whose components are not sovereign. and its size as the area over which the Empire has some undisputed military and taxation prerogatives. So basically just wherever they are in military control and wherever they get some taxes from. Now, the largest empires by land area are... It's very interesting to look at the differences that you have here. Because taking as a matter of context, as Wikipedia states, the total land area of the Earth is 148,940,000 kilometers squared, or 57,500,000 square miles. So there is a list present on Wikipedia that's empires whose greatest extent exceeded 2% of that area or more. At the bottom of that list you have the Sui dynasty, which was in 589, but then the further you go up that list, you have the Roman Empire, which covered a maximum land area of 5 million kilometers squared, with a max land area in terms of miles as 1.93 miles squared, which was just a grand total of 3.36% of the world's surface, and that was in I think AD 117. That was when it was at its biggest. You also have a little bit further up the Han dynasty, which I think is potentially one of the more famous dynasties. Oh, if we move a bit further forward to the Ming dynasty, because that's arguably more famous. That had 6.5 million kilometers squared, or 2.51 million miles squared, covering 4.36% of the world's area, and that was in 1450. But then you get up to the biggest ones, and there's a very marked leap from the Yuan dynasty from 1310, because they covered 7.39% of the world's land area. You can get up to the Spanish Empire at 9.2% of the world's land area in 1810. You also have, just below the Spanish Empire, the Second French Colonial Empire with 7.72% in 1920. But then the top four are the Qing dynasty, 9.87% of the world's land area in 1790. You have the Russian Empire, which covered 15.31% of the world land area in 1895. You have the Mongol Empire, which covered 16.11% of the world's land area, and that was either in 1270 or 1309. One of the two, we're not necessarily sure. But the biggest empire to have ever existed was the British Empire, which covered 35.5 million kilometers squared, or 13.71 million miles squared, which was 23.84% of the world's land area, and that was in 1920. So, really, the British Empire was the largest and most recent example of world domination, and probably the closest that anyone has ever gotten, I suppose. So, I mean, obviously there are certain major players who tried to dominate the world. You have, like, Napoleon, you have Hitler, and all that sort of stuff. But really, not many people have ever managed to get very far at all in their quest. And even 20-odd% of the world's land area is not a lot. It's not a lot at all. Especially considering that is just land, because a lot of the world's surface is covered in water, so yeah, you'd have to do a lot of work to even stand a chance of getting anywhere. Now, I believe that's pretty much as far as I'm going to get with my rambling about world domination, but I hope you have found it relatively interesting. I would say certainly be very thankful to Wikipedia for providing all that information for us. But it's all useful information and stuff that you may not have ever spent the time to think about. And also I'm just very grateful because it's pretty much brought me to the end of the day. So that just means that I have less to blather on about. I'm certainly going to have to keep this up for future parts, shall we say. Because there are going to be many more days like this in the future. It's practically unavoidable because of the way that Little King's story lays itself out. And I know for a fact that there is definitely a section of the game which is maybe not quite as long as the bit prior to taking on the Kingdom of the Jolly, but is still quite hefty in its length. But seeing as we've made our way all the way over here, I think it's just time to return home, cash everything in, see what we can get, because I think we might be able to make quite a big dent into our kingdom plan. And that will make me very happy. So let's see, how much did we make? Ooh! 8 million, that's not bad. I think we can... Ooh, so we've got 9 million. Ooh! So let's make the Jolly residence, and you know what, we might as well just make the rest of these residences, and then... Soldier Town is basically complete. Hell yes! So I think... tomorrow... do a few more quests, maybe hopefully finish off the Royal City, maybe not, but either way, it'd be nice to make the effort to try, wouldn't it?